Global vaccination efforts haven't been smooth sailing for many countries, from Europe to Asia and even the United States. Many nations, they are falling short of immunisation targets. The problems range from production delays to uneven distribution and public hesitancy to take the vaccine. For a closer look, we're joined now by Professor Prashant Yadav in Washington, D.C. He is a professor at INSEAD and an expert on health supply chains and vaccine rollouts. Professor, what are the main challenges to vaccination so far?
So most of our effort in the last 7 and 8 months of planning has focused on looking at the product flow, the physical flow of vaccines. I think in doing so, we often don't keep in mind that effective supply chain requires ensuring that the flow of product, the flow of information, and the flow of finances remain synchronized. So in many countries, including here in the United States, what we've seen is that information about when supplies will become available, how many doses will be dispatched to which state, those information sets were not sent in advance time to the states. Similarly, information about how many vaccinees are coming to a given site, how is demand matching with supply on a fine granular day-to-day basis. Such information architecture wasn't put in place. So that's been one of our leading constraints. The other big constraint has been the ability to focus on the right accountability structure between multiple levels of government, especially in countries where there is a federal, a state, and additional layers of government.
Professor, are there major differences in the way that it's being handled in Asia?
Yes, I think what we've seen in the United States, for example, is that because health is a state subject, many of the aspects related to scheduling vaccination clinics, setting up the operational infrastructure for vaccination clinics, those were activities which were run by the state governments, and the federal government was in charge of ensuring supply. But what we've seen in countries in Asia is that there is a much more centrally coordinated architecture where the central government is managing the planning not only of supplies and sourcing of supplies from the manufacturers, but also of physical distribution and managing the information, both scheduling and stock and flow information in the supply chain is being managed centrally. And that's leading to a better vaccination rollout.
And do you think that is the better way to go in terms of looking at how Asian countries are distributing these vaccines compared to how they're doing it in the West?
So it's better in the sense of getting the doses, matching demand and supply. Now, there are aspects in a vaccine rollout which may perhaps require much stronger local health agencies to take the lead, such as working with levers to reduce vaccine hesitancy, creating greater demand-side levers. And those might be things which are better managed by the local agencies. So I think it's a fine balance between how do you change the locus of different activities in a vaccine rollout to central planning versus very fine granular planning at the local agency level.
Australia had initially indicated it would take a watch and wait approach. Do you think many countries and even individuals want to adopt this sort of approach?
So one of the benefits of a wait and watch approach, where it can be done, especially in countries where the current infections are lower, is newer vaccines will become available over time. And they will have a much more diversified portfolio of vaccines to choose from. Secondly, we will have the luxury of learning from the early rollouts that are happening in Europe, in the US, in India, in Indonesia, many countries with large populations, to figure out what is the right operational way. Should it be a focus on large vaccination sites, such as stadiums, community centers, where you can pool the demand and match supply better? Or is it better to focus on primary healthcare physicians and the routine places where people go to seek primary care, and what is the right balance between those two? So those are things which Australia or other countries which are playing a wait and watch approach can learn.
Many thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. Prashant Yadav, Professor of Technology and Operations Management at INSEAD.